talk about Christology and the Beatific vision. Now, start with John Gill on the eternal word. He taught that the various divine voices and appearances in the Old Testament were not directly from God the Father, but were manifestations of the eternal word, the eternal Son of God. Now, in John 5:37, it says, "You have neither heard his voice at any time nor seen his shape." He's using this to argue that all Old Testament theophanies, appearances of God, and verbal communications were mediated through the second person of the Trinity. Now, going to Gregory of Nyssa and the life of Moses, which is this ascent to God, this beatific vision, which begins in this life. I want to connect that as well as Edwards and Jonathan Edwards and how they saw this Christological focus of the beatific vision even in the hereafter. Now, for Gregory, looking at Moses into the cloud on the mountain in Exodus 20:21, he's seeing this, that God is beyond all knowledge and comprehension. Here, for Gregory, Moses slips into the inner sanctuary of divine knowledge and enters into the tabernacle not made with hands. Gregory identifies this heavenly tabernacle with Christ, uncreated in his pre-existence. And he speaks of the incarnate Christ as well as of his church as the earthly tabernacle. One of the things Gregory touches on is that even though that Moses has already seen God face to face in Exodus 33, Moses still asks God to show him his glory, which then leads to the third theophany where Moses is allowed to see God's back from within a cleft of the rock. And Gregory again sees this Christologically. Christ is identified as the rock. Now, going to Jonathan Edwards much later, he's also seen this very Christologically. He regards Christ as the grand medium of the vision of God, even as the consummate theophanic appearance of God. And he also is seeing the infinite progress of the vision of God, and also he sees it as beginning in this life right now, seeing God with eyes of the soul, as he says. For Edwards, Christ is the central object of the beatific vision. They had focused on Christ as the one in whom God is seen in heaven. Many of the earlier Puritans, like Ambrose and John Owen Edwards, believed that Christ forever is our means of communication with God, so that mediation characterizes our relation to God in the hereafter. Christ is the sun that enlightens the heavenly Jerusalem, by whose bright beams it is that the glory of God shines forth there, to the enlightening and making happy all the glorious inhabitants, that we see in, he's kind of referencing the book of Revelation there at the end. So for Edwards, there's never this vision of the essence of God. For Edwards, such a vision of God would imply natural personal union of the believer with God and erasing of the distinction between creature and creator. Only Christ, the only begotten Son of God, who is eternally in the bosom of the Father, has such a natural personal union with God. For the believer, the vision of God always remains a mediated vision, mediated, that is, through Christ.